Boredom is a common experience across all sapient creatures, making it odd. Humans are the only ones who use boredom to justify unexplainable behaviors. Miriam is stationed on the Seagon cruiser. The term soft touch refers to anything delicate and pleasant to touch, rather than easily swayed. She is in propulsion. After an order from the Colonian High Command, humans are no longer permitted to work on the flash warp drives alone. However, they can still be part of the propulsion team. Miriam works in the engine room with her crewmate Desi A. Zak, an insectoid species from a high-oxygen world, and they get along well. Miriam relaxes back in her chair and glances across at Desi, who is slumped over a console. The wing coverings are shimmering in the dim light of the room. Miriam wonders why the gravity polarizers do not have a range table in the instructions. Desi was unfamiliar with working with humans and found it difficult to adjust to their habit of approaching them and starting a discussion without a proper introduction. Miriam, the polarizers are adjusted to a comfortable range for all sapient species. What are you doing reading the handbook for 'em? She shrugged. I've been bored since the Coalition banned us from using flash warp drives. They still refuse to explain why most humans have been relocated to other systems. I got trained on flash warp, but am currently unable to work on it. To pass my time, I am reading manuals and technical documents. The gravity polarizers are impressive, but the documentation lacks information on their maximum and minimum settings. However, it is assumed that they can all reach zero. How high Desi sputters. Miriam, it doesn't matter how high they can travel, as long as the gravity is tolerable for everyone on board. Miriam scoffed. It is a mess. These details are important. We can't be too heavy-handed about this until we have everyone in good work. Desi, use your imagination. We could do a lot more if we knew how high we could safely set the gravity polarizers. She touches the panel to test it. Her hand slips on the touch panel and slides the slider nearly all the way up. Oops, alarms, yelling and shouting in a half-dozen languages, cracked fittings emit smoke and vapor, straining against 4 or 5 times Earth's gravity. Arya opens the door to the propulsion office with heavy footfall on the floor paneling. Miriam, Desi, are you all right? Desi's voice is muffled as they lie face down on the floor, unable to rise up. Miriam was injured in a fall and is unresponsive. I can't move my head to check on her. Desi's breathing is difficult due to their enormous box lungs. They push with all their strength to turn and peek out. Arya, it's difficult to move around, Desi, but humans are powerful. Miriam approaches the gravity polarizer station with caution, noticing that it is nearly entirely cranked up. She wonders why it cannot go any higher. Miriam stated that there were no range tables in the tech docks, and she was trying to learn more about gravity polarizers when the incident occurred. Arya touched the panel, causing the indicator to jitter erratically. Ira pulled the indicator down to return it to its former setting. Desi stepped up, revealing the floor pattern embedded in their front carapace. Arya noticed Miriam was bleeding after being struck down by gravity. She requested Desi's assistance in transporting her to the infirmary to ensure her safety. Miriam sits in the shipboard HR office waiting area, looking at the floor with her knees tightly together. Her head and left shoulder are bandaged. Captain Nictor goes out, fur puffed out in wrath, followed by Xanar, the HR manager, and another sea god. Miriam, please come with me. Miriam enters a little office and stands. Xanar sits at the enormous desk and motions with a small furred paw. Please sit. Am I fired? Zark smiles. I would avoid Captain Nath for a few cycles, as he may use the slug launcher to harm you. Did you remember to turn up the gravity, Xanar? You did, but it was by accident. I already spoke with Desi. My fingers slipped across the touch panel. I had no idea they were that sensitive. We didn't either. Those panels aren't designed for human use. Your species makes them run at a far higher sensitivity than others. I mention this in my report for future reference. Xanar looks down at the report and wonders what you were doing at the gravity polarizer station. Miriam, the Coalition claims that humans cannot use the flash warp drive anymore. As a trained flash warp operator, I found myself bored and eager to learn new systems. I noticed that no one seemed to understand gravity polarizers, so I decided to study more about them and transmit my knowledge. She shook her head at the tech docs, which only contained a troubleshooting tree and a reminder to call support if they failed. She was about to change the gravity when her fingers slipped and brushed against the console. She looked up at Xanar, who looked down at their report and saw only bruises and cracked carapaces. Miriam relaxes as Xanar swipes a few pages on their pad and reads for a moment, recalling you. Miriam's face fell. I thought I wasn't being fired, but rather transferred to work with the Coalition on human UI and UX on Coalition ships. This is not the first time this has happened, and Human Fleet Command recommended we start the project. Did you know we didn't have a specific department to help with the user interface like you do? Miriam nods emphatically after using your panels.